because they make spectacular medicine. And when we're using them medicinally, we can use really low doses. And so like I've had a friend who he's like, oh, I dug up like pounds worth, and I was like, oh, that would be like years worth of medicine, and he like ate it in a day. And that's okay, but also like years worth of medicine. I'm in Michigan. I know as you get south, the populations of the salmon seal start to get more abundant. And I know that you have more of the Polygonatum commutatum growing wild, which is the giant salmon seal, can be like this big. Where I'm at, I mostly have the Polygonatum biflorum. And what that means is that if you look here, you can see these little stems. I don't see any that still have berries on them, but you can see these little stems underneath. And the biflorums, they'll look like little upside down Ys. In the springtime, there'll be 2 flowers that are kind of like a whitish green. They look like little bowling pins that are open at the end, hanging down. And in the summer and late summer into fall, they will ripen and produce these like blue-black berries, dark kind of blue-black berries. Those berries are supposed to be toxic in some way. I've tasted a couple. I don't know quite in what way they're toxic. I've never read that. So I wouldn't suggest eating them or using them in any kind of quantity. And you'll notice that this plant doesn't have anything underneath. It just hasn't flowered yet. Like it doesn't have it. But right next to it and probably connected to the same rhizome. This one has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Milo, come here.
1, 2.
These are going to be the best pictures, Jim.
Milo colored rhizomes. We're so neat to work together. You can use Polygonatum biflorum or Polygonatum biflorum variety commutatum. Those would be the wild ones that would grow in this area. This is Polygonatum multiflorum, meaning it has more flowers, like several flowers on it, and it'll produce several berries. You could use Polygonatum pubescens. You can use Polygonatum odoratum. If it's a Polygonatum genus Solomon seal, I don't know of any that don't work like this. There may be some in a different part of the world that I've never heard of that don't work similarly, but it seems like all the ones that I've tried and all the Polygonatums that anyone else I know has tried have worked similarly. And what I do is I dig up the rhizome, and ideally what I would do is uncover it, find the rhizome in the dirt, break, and these are just, they're kind of deep in the dirt, so not on the surface. When you find them growing wild, sometimes you'll see the rhizome sitting right on the surface. The top might be actually green colored because if it's exposed to sunlight, it'll start to photosynthesize because it's a stem. And I will, let's say that this was the Solomon seal. I'll uncover it, I'll break it off maybe an inch or 2 behind the plant that's growing, and then pull up the back end of it. And that way I can harvest it without ever pulling the growing part of the plant out of the ground. And in a year or 2, where I broke it, it'll put up another leaf or another stem with a bunch of leaves on it, and they will produce flowers and then berries, and then you actually have more flowers and berries and more seeds falling on the ground. You can harvest the root and actually cultivate the plant at the same time. We can see the root just right here at the top of the ground, and this is kind of like the perfect way to gather it. It's not really deep in the ground, and I could, with my fingers, I can just start to uncover the root without even taking it out of the ground, right? So here's this plant, and each one of these knuckles, it's ironic if you're into the doctrine of signatures and you're thinking about joint issues, look at that, that's really cool. Each one of these knuckles is a year's growth, so in a year this biflorum, which grows slower than some of the other species and has smaller roots, only grew this much, and the year before only this much. So if I want to harvest this plant, the way that I gather it is I think well, here's where it's going to start growing next year. Here's all of its past lives. And I want to give it enough food. So I might take my knife and clip it there. Sometimes I just use my finger. And then I can reach with my finger and I can get underneath of the root and I can kind of trail back along the length of the root and then pull up the length of root. And there is the salmon seal root. I can then cover this back up and the plant will continue to grow with absolutely no impact. But what might happen is where I broke the root or where I cut the root, another shoot will come out. And from this same root, there'll be 2 above ground plants, and that means that more flowers form and more berries form and more seeds fall on the ground. And over time, if you harvest like this, you'll actually have more Solomon seal growing in the areas that you're harvesting from, which is very cool. Solomon seal. And it looks really similar. One of the things that I found routinely noticeable about it, without having to look for berries or flowers, is the stem is usually a little bit thicker. The leaves, usually the veins on them are a little bit more pronounced. They're a little bit deeper and just more visible. Sometimes it seems to have a darker green, but not always. If this plant had flowers or had berries on it, they would be terminal, so at the end of the plant, but there's none here. So if I look underneath, there's nothing, and then there's nothing. So how do I know for sure that this is false Solomon seal, Smilacina something or another? SPA is what we say instead of something or another. Or maybe SPA stands for something or another? Yeah. I just happen to know what it is because I'm around it all the time. But I could also, if I wanted, I could look here and do the same thing with the root. So you can feel in the dirt around the stem. And, oh, look, this is the shoot for next year's plant right there. So next year, that's where it's going to be growing. So I'll cover that back up. But that means that the other side of the root is around this way. So, oh, I think I feel it. So again, I'm going to, oh, this root is really short. Oh, no, there it is. Give it a little bit of space and then break it. And then pull it out and then cover everything up because that's nice. And you'll notice when you look at the 2 roots that the false Solomon seal root is much more yellow colored. The true Solomon seal root, where it has its indentations, its seals, like a stamp that you would put on an old piece of parchment that you're going to give to someone. On the false Solomon seal, it has the knobbiness, but it doesn't have the indented seal. So sometimes the true Solomon seal roots will be smaller and the false Solomon seal roots a lot bigger. Other time the size can be different. So this isn't typical just by looking at the size of them, but the coloration is very typical.
Wait, can you use the berries and flowers?
Not really,
No,
not that I know of. It's mostly the rhizome that we're using.
Okay.
I chop it up, I make a tincture out of it fresh. When I send handouts to you all, because I will send handouts, it'll have instructions on how to make tinctures, so I don't need to spend the class time doing that. And then, this plant, you can take like between 5 and 15 drops a few times a day, and it is really good for joint inflammation.
Oh my god.
But it's really good specifically, because if we just leave it at that, people will be like, anybody's joint inflammation? Always, like any joint inflammation? And the way that I think about herbs isn't just like, oh, the way that we think about, the way that most people learn about plants, the way I started to learn about plants is like, I learned about this plant. What problems is this plant good for? I have a problem. What plants are good for this problem? And you can do that for a while and it works okay, but then you start finding out over time the ways that it doesn't work, right? And what Solomon seal is specifically good for is when there's dryness in the joint that is a causative or aggravating factor in that joint inflammation. So I'm going to use my hands to demonstrate this. Let's say we have a bone and a bone. These are bones. And my knuckles are the cartilage. If I still had some of this charcoal thing, I could have made them gray to mark that off. But let's say my knuckles are the cartilage. And you don't have like a bone and bone rubbing up against each other. There's a pad of cartilage so that the bones aren't abrading on each other. But there's also a membrane that surrounds the joint called the synovial membrane. And then inside of that joint capsule is this gooey substance called synovial fluid. And it's kind of got a consistency between like egg white and like mucilage or like marshmallow or slippery elm or okra. So that even with the cartilage, as your joint's moving around, the cartilage isn't scraping up against one another. Because if it is, that creates friction. And the friction creates structural damage. And your body responds to damage with inflammation. Inflammation is awesome. Inflammation is like the greatest thing ever. And I know a lot of people don't feel like that if you have an inflammatory system or condition, but you would never recover from any injury without inflammation. You would never recover from any infection without inflammation. It is only when inflammation can't like go through its process and then be done with it that we get chronic inflammation that ends up damaging and degrading tissues, right? But inflammation going through its process is how we repair things. So the inflammatory response is really important. That's how we heal. If you have joint pain because there's not enough lubrication in your joints and you're getting friction, and that friction is causing structural damage, and your body is trying to fix that, but you don't increase the lubrication of those joints somehow, the inflammation can't resolve itself, right? The inflammation won't be able to resolve itself because there's still that friction. That's a causative thing that's going on. What a lot of people do is, like, conventionally they might take like Tylenol or ibuprofen or some kind of anti-inflammatory steroid thing to ease their joint inflammation because it's swollen and hurts, and then they take that and it feels better. But that does not increase lubrication. But a bunch of people who are into what we're into, or that's what I'm assuming because we're all here right now, we might do the exact same thing. We might be like, oh, turmeric is such a great anti-inflammatory, and when my joints hurt, I take turmeric and the swelling and pain goes down. But still, turmeric does not increase moisture in joints, and so you can ease the pain and diminish the swelling and yet still be having all of the things that are causing that because there's not enough lubrication. And what Solomon Seal does is it helps to somehow, and I physiologically don't know what the process, how this works is, nobody does, it either increases like the viscosity or the quantity or both of the synovial fluid in the joints so that it improves lubrication. And then the dryness that is predisposing to the tissue damage and the inflammation is diminished or goes away, hopefully goes away, usually at least diminished, so that there is less inflammation or that the inflammation can resolve itself. Does that make sense to everyone? Mm-hmm. Another thing that is related for like the structural system that this can be good for is a lot of times we talk about the musculoskeletal system, which is problematic, which is why I said the structural system. If we think the musculoskeletal system, we think about muscles and we think about bones, and we don't think about all the other tissues which are really important, which is your tendons and your ligaments and your cartilage, and especially your fascia. So like, I'm gonna make an assumption that everyone here at some point in their life has like opened up a citrus fruit. Does this work? Has anyone not done that? Do you see how good I am at this? I was gonna be a psychic, but I like plants more. So I don't know whose analogy this is to credit, but like the people that are into fascia and body work, this is pretty popular among them. Imagine an orange, we just do an orange, and you got the outer orange, you know, peel on it, and if you start to peel that, there's that thick inner white pith that is separate from, but not really, because until you peel it, it's connected to the center of the orange and the string that goes between the wedges. And then each one of the wedges also has its own little white, but thinner than the pith of the orange segments. And then within each little section, all of the little like compartments of juice are surrounded by this. So imagine in the body that that is like your fascia. So you have your skin, and underneath your skin, all mixed up with your white adipose tissue, all mixed up with your fat, is a bunch of superficial fascia, which is connected to all the other fascia in your body, which is surrounding all the cells. So like, fascia is everywhere, and then although technically tendons and ligaments and cartilage are not fascia, fascia basically like, you have like muscle cells surrounded by fascia, and then they condense and they... So if you've ever thought, some people, this is not their problem, but you probably know someone, I'm gonna just say it's me. You have to decide whether it's me or not. If I'm like, wow, I really wish I could touch my toes. I wish I was more flexible. I should do yoga more. Well, at the very least, I can like reach down and try to touch my toes. And I'm like, oh, I can only get that far. But I know if I just do this like every day for a long time, I'll be able to stretch down. But like 7 months later, I'm like, how come I can't get farther? Why aren't my muscles stretching? It might be that it's not that your muscles aren't becoming more stretchy, but that your fascia and your connective tissue is dry and stiff, and it doesn't want to stretch. So your muscles might be able to stretch, but the tougher material is like you're hitting a wall with that. And there are different techniques that you can do with body work and certain ways of stretching and holding stretches for a longer period of time. But it seems that the rhizome of Solomon seal can help to moisten that tissue. I learned about this plant from Matthew Wood, an herbalist in Wisconsin now, and sometimes Michigan. And Matt, in his book of herbal wisdom, when he kind of like broke Solomon seal open to the world, what he said is like, if your tendons need to be loosened, it'll loosen them, and if they need to be tightened, it will tighten them. And I thought about that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, plants sometimes do stuff like that. Yarrow does that with like blood issues. Like if your blood needs to be clotted, it'll help to clot the blood, and if you have a bruise and the blood's all congealed, it'll break up and disperse the blood. Like there's that kind of like amphoteric action where it does sort of what your body needs. But then I thought about Solomon seal, and actually that's not what I think is happening. I don't think it's like saying like, if you need this, I'll do this, and if you need that, I'll do that. I think it's that if your connective tissues are dry and stiff and stretched out, they stay stretched out. And if they're dry and stiff and scrunched up, they stay scrunched up because they don't have pliability. And when we restore moisture to those tissues, we also restore pliability to them. And so they can like contract or stretch out according to what they need because they're not dry anymore.
So do you use that as like topically or just the root tincture?
So I make a root tincture of the fresh root mostly. Some people make it with the dried. I generally prefer the fresh on this particular plant. Not necessarily on all plants, but on this particular plant. You can make an infused oil of this. With the infused oil, I always freshly dry this when I'm infusing it because the mucilage that's in the root, if that gets into your oil, it's going to make your oil go bad quicker. Like you don't want water in your oil, and there's a trick to making fresh plant infused oils without having water in them. But the mucilage makes that trick harder to work, or it doesn't work as well. So I like to freshly dry it. And then the other thing I like is if I'm using it topically, I want to mix it with something a little bit warming. So I might have some like infused ginger oil, or maybe some infused like cinnamon oil, or maybe even just like some infused arnica oil, or some infused goldenrod infused oil is really nice in here. But ginger is actually a really pretty nice thing to add to that. The warming sort of like gets it to penetrate and start working more quickly, because this plant topically, I just think it doesn't want to like jump in there and start doing stuff. But if you add a warming thing in there, that warming thing is like getting your more introverted friends to socialize at the party because they're with me, right?
So would you like blend it with ginger and use like a poultice? Or would you put it with an oil?
You can. I mostly will do it in oil. I have done a poultice of this, and it makes a pretty good poultice because it's gooey. I mean, it's pretty gooey when you crush it up. It's got a lot of mucilage in there. But generally, I do in oil. You can make a salve with it as well. Just add wax to the oil.
From the dried herb.
Yeah.
Is caused by dryness.
So, one time, just hanging out with my daughter, and I was like, and she's like, "What is wrong with you? Why does your neck make that noise?" So, just to share the love to you all, take a moment and roll your head around. And if you're hearing a so there's actually a medical term for that noise, and the medical term for that noise is
How do you spell that?
it's spelled CKYZRCKZYCKCZYKR. I think I missed an R. Yeah, I'll send it in the handouts.
So like cracking joints
Yeah,
too?
and
Like,
what that's telling you is like there's not really adequate lubrication in your joints.
Yeah.
Right? And it might be your wrists, it might be stuff there, but this is not the be-all, end-all only thing to address that, because what this is going to do is supply like a water-based moisture, and your body needs fluids in water forms and in fat and oil and lipid forms. And if you don't get enough fats and oils and lipids are fats and oils, right? So fats, oils, your body will have to make them. Like, I'm not judgmental about people's diets. People eat the way they want to eat. And people have diets, and sometimes I look at a diet and I was like, that's not a very good diet, but I'm not judgmental about it. But there's also all kinds of like healthy diets that are all diametrically opposed. And I'm not on the side of like one diet over another. There are some diets that make me twitch a little bit. And one of them is when people don't consume any fats or oils or lipids of any kind because they just think like that's a macronutrient. If you don't do that, your body will make lipids out of carbs and proteins, right? If you're like, oh, my person's not going to give me fats and oils, my preferred way to make lipids, I'll just make them out of carbs and proteins. But that means that they're taking carbs and proteins away from other things carbs and proteins should be doing. And usually you will see some kind of lipid deficiency in that person, like in their tissues. You can't replace lipid moisture with water moisture. Because just like they don't mix like oil and water and you can shake them up, right? They don't mix in your body. You can't replace one for the other. You can't just like drink more water. You need to get some kind of thing. So this will restore like a water-based moisture, but probably a person will need like omega-3 EFAs. I mean, ideally from a food source, but from a supplement if they can't get them from a food source. And the supplement could be algae oil, or it could be fatty wild seafood. I don't care where they get it from. I think about nutrition is like, rather than having it attached to like this diet, just be thinking like, I want to eat in a way that I get all the raw materials my body needs to work. And if I'm not getting that from the diet that I'm eating, is there something I can change? If I don't want to change the diet that I'm eating, is there a supplement that I can take to get the raw materials your body needs to work? I should stop on this now because I can go on and there.
I personally have been wondering what to do with this because I transplanted some of it from the house.
Oh, yay.
And so I knew it was valuable, and I forgot why, and now I remember.
Yes.
I appreciate
There's people
that.
growing herbs here. People
Yeah,
are
planted that.
really looking for
Together.
cultivated sources of this plant. So if you go to the United Plant Savers, evidently I'm not going to stop talking about this plant. If you go to the United Plant Savers, you will sometimes see this on their like to watch list of like at-risk plants. Like, oh, this one's not at risk yet, but to watch it. That list does not mean threatened or endangered. Those are legal terms, right? Some of the plants on those lists are threatened or endangered. Some of them are not. What the United Plant Savers list means is that if salmon seal were to become really popular on a larger social scale, there's not enough being cultivated to supply that demand, and wild populations would really be severely impacted. And so what we really need is people cultivating this plant, and it is easy to cultivate. Yeah, and you can, the larger ones, the multiflorums or the commutatums, the giant salmon seals, they form more like clumpy patches and grow more abundantly. And what I do with those, I wild harvest some, and I also have some growing, is I will dig up a patch, break off all the shoots, replant those, use all the rest of the rhizomes, and then because the bigger ones grow so much more aggressively, they just grow into all new plants, and a few years later I can reharvest it and replant them and reharvest it and replant them and reharvest it and replant them, and that is very sustainable. So you can get like the multiflorum or any of like the garden varieties. You can even use the variegated ones, but I mean, all things being equal, like if you have like Ohio native plant growers and you can get the native species from them and plant that, then that's all the cooler because you're restoring native plants into the habitat.
Do those joint benefits, does that also apply to false salmon seal? Or is that...
False salmon seal seems to look similarly, but weirdly, even though I've used it, I don't have as much experience with it. And the reason is just very This is actually white vervain.
Oh.
So white vervain. And the Latin name for it is really cool because the Latin name for it is verbena, our vervain genus, and urticifolia. Urtica is the Latin genus name for nettle. Folia means leaf. So this is nettle leaf vervain. And that really sure does look nettly.
Yes.
The flower stalks are just starting, and you can see they're up. They're going to be spikes that come up here. They're just starting here. They're just starting here. They're just starting here. They're going to start here and here and there and there. And they're going to be like really long and like kind of all over the place with teeny little white vervain flowers on them. But let's find a really nice leaf. And then let's trade spots over here. Because This is blue vervain. So white vervain over there, blue vervain over here. And the leaves are really similar, but blue vervain often, very often, not always, on its leaves, the back of them will be kind of like winged out like this. So you can see white vervain leaf, blue vervain leaf. Not every single blue vervain leaf will be winged out like this, but it is fairly common. And I'll pass these around. They're a little bit rough and kind of sandpapery. The flower spikes are starting here. You can kind of see like the purpley starting on them. It's so cute. I feel like little plant parts. I feel just like puppies and kittens. Like, oh, the new flowers are starting. I talk to them like that too. And again, square stems and opposite leaves. Sometimes people will be like, oh, is it in the mint family if it has square stems and opposite leaves? But no, it's not. All mint family plants have square stems and opposite leaves, but not all plants with square stems and opposite leaves are mint family plants. That's like saying all crows are like an iridescent black color, but not all iridescent black birds are crows, right? So one thing with the blue vervain, we can look at it, we can see on these lower leaves, like they've got extra leaves sticking out in the axils, which is kind of cool. They may or may not have the winginess towards the bottom, but these are pretty nice blue vervains here. This is the popular vervain that everyone in North America thinks is like the right vervain to use, and white vervain is the not popular vervain, which people think is like not the one that they want. I make tinctures of both of them, and I make tinctures of these and not teas. If you make a strong enough tea of blue vervain or white vervain, or probably also hoary vervain, or Verbena brasiliensis, which grows in the southeast. I don't think it grows up this far. They'll make you throw up.
Oh.
It doesn't seem like a horrible, terrible throwing up, but they can make you throw up. And so that might not be what you want. Like for a lot of people, that's not what they want. For some people, they're like, oh, that would be cleansing. Okay, just a quick tangent onto cleansing. Cleansing isn't bad. 90+% of what people are promoting as cleansing is probably bad. And I'm just going to put out one simple concept. Gentleness over time is better than intermittent forcefulness. Long-term gentleness is better than intermittent forcefulness. If you want to cleanse in a gentle over time way, eat bitters on a regular basis. Eat bitter greens. They could be dandelion greens or mustard greens or endive or radicchio or broccoli rabe, all kinds of wild plants, right? And if you eat them on a regular basis, that is like clean as you go. And it seems to be way harder for people to do that than to be like, ugh, you know, rather than do that, like rather than like taking radicchio and quartering it and putting some oil and salt and pepper and garlic powder on it, a ton of time, and then roasting it in my oven for like at 400 for like 12 minutes, and then flipping over, and then like another 12 minutes, and then drizzling it with balsamic vinegar and eating that, you know, like at least once a week. I would rather drink a tea that's gonna like keep me in my house pooping dramatically, loosely, because somehow I think that is more powerful and more healthy for me to do. Like if you put it like that, I think we can make better choices. Okay, some people are into the whole throwing up thing. They think it's cleansing. I'm. If you want to, I guess it's okay.
Jim, did you say though that you do make tea with these two vervains?
I do not like making tea because they can make you throw up.
You do not like
making tea. Do not make tea.
Thank you.
I mean, you can make it. You can make it weak enough, but you might throw up. Some people are getting more sensitive. If you make a tincture with it, which is just like vanilla extract, basically, you chopped up herb and alcohol water mixture and let it sit for a while, and then put it in a dropper bottle and take squirts of it. You can take that in 10 or 20 drop doses or 5 or 10 drop doses. I find smaller doses of this more often, kind of on an as-needed basis, work better than taking bigger doses less often. That's also kind of my philosophy. Mostly, blue vervain is used as a nervine, something to help when you're stressed out. We often think of nervines as like they're stronger nervines and like weaker nervines. Like people would say something like, "Oh, valerian is a stronger nervine than chamomile," but that's not true. They're just qualitatively different. Because when we think stronger and weaker, we usually think like more effective and less effective, and that's not totally not true if we're thinking valerian and chamomile. A better way to think about it is maybe also about cleansing. Forceful herbs and gentle herbs. This is kind of in the middle of the road. I wouldn't say it's super gentle. It's not super forceful. But there's also another way to think about this plant is that we, as does homeopathy, as does flower essences, but herbalists, we sometimes think like, in general, if you're tense and your muscles are tense and your neck is all tight and like you got a lot of like neck and shoulder pain, and you take a tincture of the plant, it'll be relaxing, it'll ease your anxiety and lessen your muscle tension. And it'll probably do that for a lot of people who take it. But if you're the kind of person who, behind your stress or a major part of your stress, you've got like very unrealistic expectations about what you or other people should be able to do, and when you or other people cannot meet those expectations, you give yourself or other people a really hard time about it, and you get angry and frustrated and irritable and angsty because something that wasn't really even realistic to get done didn't get done, and that's a big aggravating aspect of the stress in your life. This plant is like perfect for you. And it's really interesting because I've gone back and really tried to look at where that comes from. And it comes from Dr. Bach, the flower essence guy. If you look in old European herbals, that presentation picture was not developed. If you look in like physiomedical or eclectic stuff, that presentation is never mentioned. It all goes back to Dr. Bach, which I think is amusing because some of my friends are like, flower essences and homeopathy, or that doesn't work. That's not herbalism. That's not real. That doesn't work. That's all BS. And I'm like, oh, but you use the indications from Dr. Bach for that. I, by the way, am only one person removed from Dr. Bach because I was in an antique store once. No, this is serious though. I bought this little medicine bottle of laudanum. This was very cool. It said like laudanum, poison, and then the doses were like under 3 months, 1 drop. 3 to 6 months, 2 drop. 6 months to a year, 3 drops. I was like, it's a good thing that the bottle was empty when I was pacing around my kitchen trying to get my babies to sleep. I would have been like, the bottle says 1 drop is okay. No. So I bought that bottle, and the let's see, the older than me woman behind the counter turned to the other older than me woman behind the counter, and she said, "This reminds me of when I used to fill up bottles for Dr. Bach back in London." And I was like, "What? Did you say you used to fill up bottles for Dr. Bach in London?" She's like, "Do you know who he is?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh." And I was like, "Can we hang out?" And she was like, "Oh." She didn't seem really into it. I tried going back there and finding her, but like, my stalker is coming again. I'm going to go hide in the back room. Here are going to get flowers on them. And probably these little stalks just starting to come up here are also going to get flowers on them. So what I would generally do is maybe like harvest here, because then I'm going to get these flowers, and these flowers. But after I clip it, there's still going to be these flowers, and well, it looks like maybe those flowers. So that every plant that I harvest isn't just like a stem that's sticking out of the ground with nothing else happening on it. It's still got some flowers on it. If there's enough blue vervain, and there's not a ton here, but if there's enough blue vervain, and I clip here, 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 and maybe I'm also using white vervain so I can do that, and I clip here, a couple weeks later, these will grow a lot more because it's not growing up at the top anymore. And someone walking by wouldn't notice that there weren't flowers. They would see a bunch of flowers there. And I like that after I harvest somewhere, that unless someone is really looking, if they walk by, they don't notice that someone had come by and picked stuff. Oh, I didn't get around to the first rule. That's also the first rule, which is don't harvest something unless you can do it in an ecologically sustainable and ethical manner. That is just as important as identifying plants. And that also should be a forethought before you start harvesting plants or before you harvest a plant. Think, can I sustainably and ethically harvest this plant? How would I do it? And then proceed that way. Rather than like gathering stuff and then later finding out like, oh, you know, that abundant patch that you found was the only abundant patch in, you know, Northwest Ohio, and you just picked a bunch of it. Or saying like, well, I only gathered 10% and that's sustainable. Except that the day before you were there, someone gathered 10%, and the day after you were there, someone gathered 10%. So we just really want to be mindful about that and have it be a forethought.
Have a plan.
Yeah, I'm also going to say, make an assumption about you, probably no one is going to like go out and be like looking for ivory tusk, you know, jewelry, because you're like, that wouldn't be, I would never do that. That wouldn't be ethical. Plants don't get the same kind of endangered, threatened, at-risk, like species of concern care that animals do because they don't have eyes. They.
Some potatoes do.
I was gonna go in the white baneberry direction, but yeah. White baneberry eyes are creepy.
Jim, are you saying that if you trim at the different joints and then it'll end up bushing out and give you more flowers?
Yep.
So like if I have it in my yard, I could make a bush instead of like these real tall things completely, kind of?
Yeah, I mean at this point, like it's not going to get bushy from the base, but probably if I were to clip it here, it'll probably be flowering from these three areas and branch out more, which
It's
can
not
be
that
really
it would
nice.
branch out from the cut. And
Yeah,
do more.
and this is going to be really bitter. In general, nervines, calming herbs that are bitter, are helpful for when people respond to stress and anxiety with frustration and irritability and angstiness, right? If you respond to, you know what, we're not by that point yet, so I shouldn't do that. Okay, let me think one more thing. So again, you can just use this for like, I'm sore and tight. I really haven't used this one topically a lot for no good reason other than that there's a lot of plants and only so much me. And so much space to store all this stuff. You know, that's where homeopathy and flower essences have us totally beat. It's because my whole house is covered with mason jars. And I went to my friend's homeopathic, like, apothecary, and it was like in one shelf of their linen closet, and they had like hundreds of things, and I was like, okay, they win there. They totally win there. Ours is prettier. Theirs is more space saving. But the vervains are really cool, and I think you can use blue vervain, you can use white vervain, you could use hoary vervain, you could use the European Verbena officinalis. It doesn't have to be blue vervain. That's just the most popular one. Blue vervain usually wants to grow somewhere wet, and white vervain will actually tolerate a lot of like more dry, disturbed areas. Sometimes you'll find just like a ton of it there. So sometimes what I can pick just depends on what I can find that's sustainable. Yeah.
Do you want to wait for it to be flowering like a little bit more before you?
Yeah, I'd want it to be a little bit more flowering. That might be idealism. One time I was like late in picking it, and I picked it when it was like kind of going back to seed,
Yeah.
and it seemed to work pretty well. I didn't notice a big difference.
Okay.
Is it just the flowers or the leaves too?
Flowers and the leaves and the stems. A lot of people, when they're hardies or oils or salves, include the stems in your preparation. Then that means your preparation has stem cells in it. And then they're vegan stem cells, so they're not really controversial, right? So I've been telling that joke for like a decade now, and I literally just saw an advertisement for vegan stem cells on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, I know I should cash in on some of these things if I just market them better. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just wondering what you think about, like, I've been thinking about this, like bitter nervines. It's like, I wonder if sometimes it's just like the bitterness affects, I mean, it's other things too, it's the energetics, but like the bitterness affects on your tummy and how like when you get nervous and anxious, it's like...
Yeah, so like bitterness will also be helpful for like, maybe when we get the, I get stressed out and my belly doesn't feel so good.
Yeah.
And bitters and aromatics can both fall into that. But if there's angstiness in there along with that.
It's like the high strung kind of thing, like...
I use this for anxiety, and I use it for insomnia sometimes. So not like any insomnia. The way that I work is like, if someone asks me a question, I do exactly what they want me to do, is I ask them a question back. It's like, Jim, what can I do for this problem? And then I ask them a question back rather than give them an answer, because it's too simple to just immediately have an answer. We don't know all the information. So if someone says, I have insomnia, what should I do? I'm like, well, I don't know. Are you you just can't stop thinking? Are you physically restless? Are your legs twitching? Are you startling at every, noise that you heard? There's like a whole bunch of different things that could be contributing to the insomnia. I was working with this one person, and you know, they said the insomnia. I was asking them the questions, and they're like, well, it's not even the like, because when I go to sleep, I usually fall asleep pretty good. I'm like, oh, are you waking up? They said, no, it's not that. It's just I just don't go to sleep. And I was like, well, why don't you go to sleep? Because I didn't get enough done. Because I still have stuff that I'm supposed to do that day, and I didn't get enough done, and so I think I can't go to sleep because I'll be even farther behind tomorrow than I was today. And I was like, that is a blue vervain or a white vervain thing. And so I suggested that, and maybe, let's just say, I'm going to make up, like 2 months later, I talked to them, and I was like, how's things going? And it was about other stuff besides insomnia, but we'll just stick with the insomnia for the story. And they're like, well, you know, when I started taking it, it actually did help really quite a lot. And I was like, okay, so when you started taking it, was it like a flavor thing? It was really bitter, and you didn't want to take it because it tastes good? And they're like, actually, it was just, I would be like, I should take the blue vervain now, and then I would think, but if I take the blue vervain now, I probably have to go and lay down in bed, and maybe I can do a couple more things before I take the blue vervain. And she's like, it took me like a month or so to get out of like thinking like that until I finally just took the blue vervain. But when I took it, I slept better, and because I slept better, I woke up not feeling so tired and exhausted and depleted, and then I was a little bit more effective during the day, and that sort of like changed the direction of the stress spiral, which a lot of times is what we need to do or want to do. Okay, a little bit over here in the sun.
So things like, I take fever food, right, because I have migraines, and it's real bitter, but I usually mix it in water, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing.
If you dilute your tinctures in water, they will still work great.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're like, I don't like the alcohol flavor, put it in like a 4th cup of water. You'll barely taste the alcohol flavor. They don't work better if you just put them right on your tongue. And you most of the time don't need to put them underneath of your tongue. You can do that if you like that, but you don't have to. So there's more shade over there. And but the plant we're talking about is this one with the white flowers. And also this one with the yellow flowers. And what I will do is, because I don't really want to stay in the sun so much either.
Let's take some.
Serrated. I think it's sweet clover. Let's not.
Yeah, that's fine.
One of these plants is white sweet clover. The other plant is yellow sweet clover. If they're not in flower, I can't tell the difference. This would be Melolotus officinalis, and this would be Melolotus alba. Alba meaning what? Officinalis, this was considered the official representative of. They are sometimes, and probably more in Europe, called sweet melilot. They are more commonly here called fructose. And they're really weedy and non-native and can be invasive. And so that makes it very sustainable to harvest them. They produce a lot of seeds. They like disturbed areas, but they'll actually grow in an area for a while and then kind of like disappear and show up somewhere else. So they don't like really persist for like a decade in one place. They do their thing. They put nitrogen into the soil, and then they move on and start growing somewhere else, which can be frustrating. You're like, I have the greatest spot, and then after it's like, why did they stop growing here? I needed them to be here. This is a plant that you can make tea with. I mostly use tincture of it. I also will infuse it in oil. But this is a plant when for preparations I make, I'm always going to dry. And I'm going to dry it because this plant has compounds in it called coumarins. And coumarins are the compounds that, if you know the plant sweet woodruff, give sweet woodruff its smell. Or if you know the plant sweetgrass, give sweetgrass its smell, right? a lot of people, in almost every article or write-up, compares the smell of coumarins in sweet clover or sweet grass or sweet woodruff to vanilla. And I just really want to be clear and say, if you have some of these and you smell them, and then you have some coumarin containing plant and you smell it, they don't smell like vanilla. And I was really confused about this for a very long time. And when I get confused about things, what I like to do is be like, I wonder if I can figure this out. And I did. It used to be, several decades ago, that there was a lot of Mexican vanilla being sold in the US. And Mexican vanilla was not just vanilla from Mexico, it was a combination extract of vanilla beans and tonka beans. And tonka beans are really high in coumarins. So this predominating vanilla that was sold in the States for decades had a mixture of vanilla and coumarin sent to it, which is where, and the reason why people say it smells like vanilla, even though it's not like vanilla smells, it smelled like tonka beans, right? The FDA says we can't consume anything with appreciable levels in coumarins as food because coumarins are dangerously blood thinning.
Oh.
And the reason they say that is because this plant, sweet clover, if it gets in quantity bundled up into hay and animals eat it, they can have their blood so thin that if they get any kind of injury, they'll just bleed to death, right? And so a lot of livestock was dying. And this is the plant that led to the discovery, to the synthesis of the drug warfarin or Coumadin, okay? And because of this, what people will do is be like, that is the plant that warfarin / Coumadin comes from. It's a really crazy, super potent blood thinner. That's not really safe for people to use. But there is no warfarin / Coumadin in this plant. Coumarins are very mildly like circulatory stimulating and blood moving, but they're not really strongly blood thinning. When the sweet clover got bundled up in the hay, it fermented, and the coumarin fermented into a compound called dicoumarol. And it's dicoumarol that is a really incredibly potent, dangerous blood thinner. If you're gathering, see how like sparse that plant is? If you hang this up in bundles, like out in your garage, until it's brittle dry, and then you lay down like a tarp or a shower curtain underneath of it, and you strip down the leaves. These ones I don't use the thicker stems on, just because I want more of the leaves proportionally. And some of the thinner stems are fine, but I just want more of the leaves and flowers proportionally, and the stems are like most of what the plant is. I strip it down. It dries so spread out, it's not going to ferment. Like if you had a huge pile of that and you put it in a big pile, like kind of like when you make a pile of grass clippings that big, and then you kind of turn it and you smell that rankness, that's what needs to happen for that dicoumarol to be produced. And bundles of this will dry so crispy dry, it's not happening. You don't need to worry about it. If you were using it topically, you wouldn't need to worry about it at all, but even internally, it's going to have this really intense sweet grass, sweet woodruff, coumarin smell to it. It's really good for when people have really sharp, intense nerve pain or neuralgia. So algia means pain, neuralgia means nerve pain. Nothing always works. So if someone has neuralgia, there's a whole bunch of different reasons that they can have neuralgia, right? So I've met people with neuralgia because they had nerves severed during surgeries. I've met people who have neuralgia because they have diabetes. I've met people who had neuralgia because of accidents and injuries. I know people that have neuralgias because they were injured. They didn't have an injury that caused their nerve problem, but they were injured and like immobile for a long time, and compression caused a nerve injury that didn't quite recover, right? There's a whole different kinds of autoimmune conditions can cause neuralgia. So a whole bunch of different pathways that we can get there. In not all, but in many cases, we can say that if the neuralgia is like hyper reactive, if it feels like someone stuck a needle or a nail or a fork or an ice pick into an electrical outlet and is stabbing you with it, and you're getting that like electrified, you know, like pokes and prods. That is specifically what this is for. And that could be really terrible, sharp, stabbing, nerve-related migraine pain or occipital neuralgia. That could be like really terrible, intense sciatica, where you feel like this intense, sharp electric current. It's the things that make you go like, that kind of stuff. It could be really sharp, stabbing nerve pain in your uterus or in your bladder, maybe related to interstitial cystitis. I work with another practitioner. They contacted me and they were looking for ghost pipe for one of their clients that had neuralgia related to Lyme disease. And we talked about it for a while, and I was like, I don't have any ghost pipe, but that sounds like a sweet clover thing. And they tried it out, and they were like, oh my gosh, I did not expect this to work so well from the sweet clover. So it works really good for that presentation. I would not really use it for like if someone has like impaired sensation. So if you got like numbness or lack of sensation, or they don't have like sharp, but they've got like the pins and needles kind of tinglies of like not quite numbness, but also not quite sensation, this doesn't work on so much. It's very much more for like a sharp, acute, intense presentation. Mostly I use it as a tincture. You can use it as a tea. 2 years ago, I'd be teaching about it. My students would be like, have you made an infused oil out of it? But I just, same thing I said about the blueberry. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And then maybe a year and a half ago, I was, occasionally I vend. I don't do it often, but occasionally I vend. I was vending, and one of my old students came in and I bought you a present, which of course I was like, yay, presents, awesome. And it was sweet clover infused oil. I was like, oh, cool. And then I thought, oh, cool, because I was working, sorry, to go that way. I was working with someone that had shingles, and all the stuff that I normally do for shingles was not working at all. Like nothing was working for it. And I was like, I wonder if this would work, because it's sharp stabbing, like hypersensitivity, like kind of sensation. And as soon as they put it on, after me going through like all the other stuff I've used, even for them over years, they're like, oh, this is good. And my most recent thing that I've been chasing around trying to figure out what's going on is I was working with someone who, her scalp was really itchy, but it wasn't just really itchy, it felt like hot and irritating. It felt like it was burning, right? And I'm like looking at their head and I'm like, there's no flaky dandruff. I don't see a rash. I don't see any inflammation. I tried some stuff in case there was something fungal that I couldn't see, and I wasn't seeing, you know, any results from that. I gave them some stuff that was, like I had them spray kava kava tincture on their head, which was like, it helps transiently. It was also kind of a waste of kava kava tincture because most of it's landing on the hair. And then I was looking into it, and it can be nerve hypersensitivity. And so I was like, oh, how about we try a new oil? And that seems, this is still in progress, but right now that seems to be changing the presentation. And they're like, this is the best thing I've tried so far. And it has nothing to do with like approaching it from a skin rash kind of way and all about the nerve sensitivity kind of way. So I feel kind of excited and hopeful about that, especially because I don't want it to be another thing that didn't work. So I'm still being optimistic. The story's in progress. Sweet clover, pretty awesome. Pretty awesome plant, really sustainable. The only thing that's hard about it is because it's so insubstantial that you can gather like a lot of it. You like carry it back to your car and you put it in your car and flowers fall over your car. And then after you strip down the leaves, you really don't have a whole lot. And I'll extract this dry, and like just 80 proof vodka works great for this. Yeah, not much of the stem. Yeah, so what I would do is each stalk, and this just works out great. So over a big blue tarp or a brown tarp or whatever color tarp you have, just grab the thick part of the stalk and go down like that. And whatever comes down on the ground is good, and that thicker part of the stalk, you can just toss that aside. You can also, like this time of year, maybe after this walk, when you get into your car and then you close the door and you go. If you gather some of these and just toss them on your dashboard, They'll last for like a good week. Your car will smell like coumarins. It's really pretty nice. You can even bundle them up in your house, and they'll last a little bit longer than in your car and make your house smell nice. It's pretty cool. It was one of the things that they would use as like a strewing herb to like throw down on the ground to like deter little insects and fleas back in the day. If your house is like flea infested, there's probably other things you need to do, and not only this, but it would smell nice. Be crunchy under your feet. This ground cover stuff,
Creeping short.
because this is really super common and underappreciated and often like disliked, overtly disliked. So this ground cover here you can if anyone needs to bring this home to plant. No, you're laughing, but I did this. Like, I actually did do this. I didn't have any on my property, so I brought it to plant. You pass that around. If you give a leaf a squeeze, you can smell it right now. Like people who are close by can already smell it.
Ooh.
So this is either called ground ivy by herbalists, creeping Charlie by most people who aren't herbalists, or that blankety blank 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 blanking plant by people who have a lot of it and haven't learned to appreciate it yet. It's in the mint family, so square stems, opposite leaves. It trails on the ground, and the stems will root into the ground, so it doesn't really grow. Like, it might grow like this tall, ish, you know, on average. Maybe a little bit taller sometimes, but like an average of this tall. But it likes to sprawl a lot more. If you mow it, it will just grow shorter, right? It doesn't want to go away. Like, mowing's not going to get rid of that. But maybe we can really think about our herbal actions and why they're so important to understand herbal actions. If you crush and if you nibble on and taste some ground ivy leaves, they are aromatic and they are astringent and they are a little bit bitter. I'm going to put the bitter part aside for right now and focus on two different systems this plant acts on quite well. One of them is the upper respiratory tract. And in general, aromatic plants in general act as decongestants for like stuffy upper respiratory congestion. So if you have the kind of upper respiratory congestion where you try to inhale through your nose and it sounds like aromatic plants are the best thing to use for that. It doesn't have to be this. It could be mint, it could be eucalyptus, it could be sage. There's a whole bunch of different things you could use. But aromatic plants, what they do is they help to like break up and disperse and thin and move that stuffy congestion. Astringents are plants that have tannins in them, and when they touch tissues, they cause them to tighten and bind together. So a ton of people know about using facial astringents. Your pores are more open. You maybe put some witch hazel extract on it. They close up, and then you secrete less oil, and your skin is less oily, and you know people don't see that you have pores. And internally, they do the same thing on tissues. Any tissue they touch that has protein, they can lessen over-secretion. So if the kind of congestion you have is and your eyes are watering and your nose is running, and it's not that you can't breathe through your nose, you just have to keep trying to suck the leaky stuff, the thin, watery, leaky stuff from leaking out of your face. And maybe it's also leaking down the back of your throat, and you have a cough, but you're not coughing from your lungs. You're coughing because your throat is irritated from the postnasal drip. That's what we use astringents for. Again, yet again, for maybe the third or fourth time, I'm going to make an assumption that you all have had a head cold that was not only stuffy and not only leaky, but like a mix of like kind of stuffy and kind of leaky drippy all at the same time.
Yeah.
So having a plant that is aromatic and astringent at the same time addresses both of those patterns. And there's a lot of different options. So ground ivy is one, and we could make tinctures of it, we could make teas of it, we could make glycerites of it. I haven't been talking about glycerites this much. I kind of personally don't like them, but they work good for what they do. And they're fine. If you like them, I think that's great. The glycerin flavors to me. But you could also use yarrow. You could also use goldenrod. You can also use ragweed, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, because Ragweed. It's out in the sun too. We're gonna save that for the finale.